Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. And on today's episode, we got a big fight on Saturday, Tarzan versus Fluffy. Also, it sounds like Joshua Van has his next opponent. Who is it and who should it be? We'll discuss that, and we'll answer your questions at the end of the show. So put them in the chat. Now that I think about it, I might have some of my own for today's panel. And let's talk about today's panel. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con. Look at this distinguished panel we have for you today. Goes from MMA Junkie Radio here in Las Vegas. Danny Segura checking in from overseas. He is one of our best reporters. Speaking of another one of our best reporters, Nolan King. He's the Boston shot caller. He is in Boston. Ken Hathaway's on the ones and twos. Please like the video and kindly consider subscribing, or judge it for your own at the end. I promise you'll want to. All right, guys, let's talk about this flyweight title picture. It's getting interesting because Joshua Van is basically telling us he's got a job. He's got an assignment. And the top two names appear to be, obviously, Tatsuro Taira and Manel Kopp, except it's really looking like Tatsuro Taira, guys. Even Manel Kopp's kind of conceding. Is this the right move, Nolan King, for them to go in that direction after all that hype with Kopp, in his last win?
Yeah, it's kind of strange, and I'd be interested to know what's going on behind the scenes with negotiations and why it's come up with this outcome. Is it the one that the UFC just wanted, or is there something more to it, right? Because I think a lot of times from the outside we wonder, why didn't the UFC make X, Y, and Z fight? Why did they go with this one? And then you peel the curtain back a little bit, and there's either somebody can't fight that week, they need somebody for Miami, maybe Kopp wasn't available. Who knows what's going on? So if all else was equal, am I a little surprised that this is the way that they went? I think so. I guess the good thing about this division right now is that I can't really be mad at any option. They're all good fights. They're all new fights. They're all intriguing fights. So yeah, I guess we'll have to see kind of what else they do to try to figure out why they made this decision. Or it seems like they're going to make this decision. But it's interesting. I mean, flyweight's a lot of fun right now. Obviously, like we've talked about numerous times on the show, it would be cool if this one were to have taken place overseas in Japan or somewhere in Asia. But if it's going to take place in Miami, I'm still going to enjoy it. I think it's a really fun fight.
Would you say it's the right move, though, at the end of the day?
I mean, I would have gone, I think, in a different direction. Again, no disrespect to Taira, but yeah, I think there were better, options that seem to make a little bit more sense out there. Kopp being one of them. So yeah, I'm a little surprised. I wouldn't have gone this way.
And though nothing's been released, Danny, we just keep hearing that, or at least the stuff that I've read. Yeah, Miami could be the spot. He was promised, I mean, God, it's not like they've never broken promises before, but this one kind of surprised me. How about you, Danny? Is it the right move?
Yeah, it is surprising. I don't think there's necessarily a bad move here. Again, there are many deserving contenders right now at flyweight, so either direction that you go, yeah, you might have some people upset, but for the most part, I don't think there's going to be any major complaints given the fact that a lot of the contenders have put in work, and there's several guys there that could be deserving of a title shot, though. But what is a little bit surprising, though, is that, one, we don't have much of a timeline from Pantoja's return, right? And from what we've seen on his social media, like, he looks to be good to go, kind of. I mean, he's training, he's lifting weights. Again, we don't have anything official from his side of things, but I would assume the UFC would kind of say something or try to get some sort of, statement out there in terms of that. And then even with the Taira fight, I do think the best fight is the Manel Kopp one. I think Manel Kopp and Joshua Van is one of the best fights you can make today, not only in the flyweight division, but in the sport in general. Kopp just seems to know what he's doing. He seems to know how to hype up a fight. He gets the game. And on top of that, he's a badass fighter, and a style matchup that is very exciting against the champion. So again, I don't hate the Taira fight, but I would have gone a different direction. I think there was a better option there with Kopp.
Okay. How about you, Goes? You feeling it?
I am not feeling it. But there's never really too much transparency with what's going on. Like Nolan said, maybe there are things going on behind the scenes that make this make sense. But outside looking in without that information, the first thing we look at is, well, Tyra's ranked 3, Cop's 2. So right away, that doesn't make sense. And what I think about more than anything is the potential disaster that Manel Cop could have on his hands. Because as Danny alluded, at some point, Pantoja is going to come back. And if he doesn't make it back right now, it's got to be after that next matchup. And I would be shocked if they told him you need to get one before you come in here and try and reclaim your belt, which would make Manel Cop's timeline even worse. We'd have to wait longer. And honestly, guys, when we look at this and we get excited every weekend at all the matchups, and a little bit of heat always helps. And that's what Manel Cop and Joshua Van have already established, right? Isn't that what the UFC always wants out of their fighters? They want them to kind of pick at each other, make there be a reason for us to all tune in. I think both sides have done that. They've done that really well. So outside of any factors that we just cannot see, to me, the one that makes more sense is Manel Cop.
I have to agree. Yeah, I think it's Cop as well as would be the right move because of that heat. And I think isn't that what Paramount Plus seems to want as well? Just something to get the fans excited about. Tyra seems like a swell guy every time we interview him, but there just hasn't been that type of I don't know. I guess we'll use heat again. There's nothing going on between those two guys. Just a lot of respect. It's, again, who's not down for that? And we don't have to have heat in all of our fights. But here's what I'm going to say. I think it's the wrong move. But if Cop gets the winner at the White House, and it happens to be Van, then it'd be the right move. Because I think this is the perfect fight to open up the White House. It would be a title fight, and it would be a cracker, man. I'm telling you, these two hard hitters, I think, would really set the tone for the night. So if somehow they pull that off, I don't know. But Danny brings up a good point. What about Pantoja?
Yeah, what do you tell him? If he's available, would you still do it if he's available, George? Or if he's available, he should be the guy?
If Van beats Tyra, would I still do Cop versus Van?
Yeah. And Pantoja says, I'm good to go, guys.
I'd still do it. Right? I'd still do it because it just has this secret sauce. It's this ingredient, of what you want to see. And that's what they're calling. Look, I have nothing to do with the White House. It's not for me or nothing like that, but it sounds like that's the event of the year. And that's the type of fights I think you want, and both of these guys are quick, cat-like. They don't like each other. We need a shove at the weigh-ins or something like that, right? And I think this one could really set the tone for the night. It's impossible for this one to suck.
Then Cop has to go down to the UFC PI, meet with them, and it seems like the secret word that he needs is, "Hey, you promise?"
That really
hold a lot of weight, right?
Yeah, they promised it to him. Too bad they didn't promise. All you need is a promise, and you're in. Okay, so
yeah, Tyra. I would say Tyra versus Van has literally no buzz at all.
Yes, another good word because I got tired of saying buzz.
Yeah.
Buzz, man, exactly. And what sucks is, look, I'm going to read you some quick resumes, guys, and if anyone wants to change their mind, fine. Otherwise, I'll keep going. This is what Manel Cop's done since coming to the UFC. He's 7-3, but he's won 6 of his last 7. However, he's been a KO machine in his last 3 fights, finishing Bruno Silva, Asu Almabayev, and Brandon Royval. Most recently, his last win was December 13th. And then as far as Tatsuro Taira is concerned, and by the way, Manel Cop's overall record is 22-7. All right. And then Tatsuro Taira is 18-1. Okay, so that looks flashier for sure on paper. His only loss is to Brandon Royval, a guy that Cop defeated. However, since then, he's beaten Park Hyung-sung and Brandon Moreno. So he does have the shiniest win, a former champion in Brandon Moreno. He also finishes fighters. 4 of his last 5 have been finishes. But again, 18-1 overall. And just in the UFC, he is 8-1. So really on paper, maybe Tyra has the better claim on a few different categories, except he lost to the guy that Cop just recently beat, if that makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, well, it sounds like that's the direction where they're going. If we hear anything by the end of the show, we'll definitely confirm it. But I guess the last question would be, so how would you match make the rest of the division, Danny? Do you just put Pantoja and Cop together, or do you kind of play it by ear and see what happens next?
Yeah, it's tough. I think first you got to figure out the timeline for Pantoja, right? I think that determines a lot of the matchmaking, because he's a guy that's been at the top for such a long time that I would assume he'd be deserving of an immediate rematch, right? But again, it all depends on the health of his arms. So first, you got to figure that out, and once you figure that out, then you can kind of start making sense of the rest of the division. But from the limited information that we have, I guess you make, I don't know, Cap versus either Pantoja or Cap versus Kyoji. And then, yeah, have Tatsu retire a fight for the belt. Again, that's not how I would have done things, but given how everything's playing out, I think that's kind of the best course of action there. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of bummed that Cap didn't get. It looks like he's not getting the shot.
If Pantoja's healthy, do you match him up with Cop? Nolan?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the clear-cut fight here, right? Again, timelines play into it. You have Horiguchi. If Moreno beats Sloan or Kavanaugh at the end of the month, he kind of comes into play, right, as somebody that, he's going to have to do a little bit to get back to the title, right? But he's also somebody that you can really throw against any of these guys when you need somebody else to fight a top contender. So, I think what Danny laid out is pretty much kind of what I'm in line with.
Do you like it when certain fighters should be penciled into certain events, but yet it also ruins the timeline? For example, Brandon Moreno, I'm not saying he was in play for a title shot, but if he were to win right away, I started thinking, well, Noche UFC in September, right? Like you start thinking about him and maybe not, not what's best for him, but what's best for the company.
I could see a business doing that from time to time, but you definitely have to pick and choose when you do that. When it becomes the norm and deserving fighters get the shaft, that's just not right. Every once in a while, it's okay.
Remember, there was a strong rumor last year that it could be Yair Rodriguez leapfrogging everybody in fighting when they were going to go to Guadalajara, and then that fell through, and that opened the door for, I guess, Lopez to get his second shot. In the meantime, Evloev and Murphy were getting screwed. But that's a whole other division. And if we're going to go to another division, why don't we go to heavyweight, guys? Oh, also, don't forget, start bringing in some questions that we can address later on in the show. We'd love to answer them for you. Again, I got a couple, but still, I'd love to hear from you guys more than mine. Moving on, Tom Aspinall. He is the undisputed heavyweight champion. He completed double eye surgery. And how can I put this to you? My reaction is just, oh, man. I mean, I really like the guy. I have to remind everyone how exciting he was. He's beaten 5 of the current top 10 heavyweights, most of them in the first round, if not all. He's a G, and yet somehow he's starting to get more disliked than liked. And so every update doesn't do much for me. Goes, how about you? What was your reaction to that?
Look, I'm happy. Hopefully this puts him on some sort of path. I wish he would be a little bit more forthcoming with information and just say, look, this is done, and this is probably when you can expect to see me back. It's weird because, people are very divided on him. I think the hardcores kind of lean towards Tom's way. He definitely went through something, and it did kind of suck that he didn't have the support of the higher-ups in the company. But at the same time, the people started coming at him, and he gave them the time. And in doing that, his team, I think you could probably agree they didn't handle that the best way. There were times where they would do stuff and people would poke holes at that. He should have just kind of stayed quiet and said, look, this is what happened to me in the fight. I cannot fight because of this, and kind of just left it at that. But he kept coming back with his own thing. So I think there's a little bit of blame on both sides, but I really do hope that it's done. He'll have some sort of plan on when he can come back and he'll be able to fight, because let's be honest, this is not the greatest division, but if you have somebody at the top that's pretty badass, you forget about it a little bit. But when you don't, boy, does it make it hard to stomach trying to plan future events and different cards. It just doesn't feel right.
Goes, would it have almost been better if he complained about the other eye? I think if he complained the other eye, the one that really went knuckle deep, everyone would just be like, oh man, Cyril Gane's the worst ever. You go get better, champ. There probably would have been a GoFundMe in the billions if it had been the other one that he's complaining about. Aesthetics.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Yeah, I think that's definitely, when you look at it, it did seem like the other one was pretty bad.
Danny, your reaction to double eye surgery complete, and what's this doing with the fan base? In your opinion, are more starting to slide to Team Tom or not?
This has been such a weird incident. I always want to favor the person who was fouled here. Obviously, talking about Aspinall. Since day one, I've sort of always backed him in terms of like, hey, if he says he can't see, he can't see, right? And that's sort of the approach as a media member I think you have to have, and you kind of have to take him at his word, right? We did get some further details. PT Carroll did a story on him, talk about how, you know, he can't stand up for very long or he gets vertigo, and, you know, he apparently can't shake hands, like he can miss like a handshake, like his eyes, his vision's not doing well at all. But then on top of that, and again, I'm no eye specialist, you do get guys that I've seen already a couple videos circle online of like eye professionals or eye doctors kind of poking holes at this whole thing. So, you know, you do start putting into some things into question. And I do agree with Goes that the way they've handled this from day one has been quite bizarre. And I understand the skepticism from the fan base. I do think a lot of it is bad faith though, but I do think that there is some reason to be a little bit skeptic on some of the things going on. But look, at the end of the day, like, you know, you just got to take him at his word. So we'll see what happens, but with no timeline, this really just makes the heavyweight division a division that's already suffering and quite shitty, to be honest. There's no other word. The heavyweight division is shitty. Just makes it even worse. The fact that we don't have a champion right now that's active, and we don't have a timeline for his return. He might not even ever fight again, considering some of the details that he's thrown out there. That might not even be on the card. So I don't know. I don't know what the hell is going on. I get why the fans are upset. The fans want fights. The fans want activity, and Aspinall is not giving them that. But man, I mean, if the guy's saying he can't see, like, you can't force somebody to fight under that state. So yeah, it sucks. I get it, but at the end of the day, you know, health comes first, and you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I definitely do understand some of that skepticism that's coming his way.
Danny, another thing that might have hurt him is Waldo fought, I think, a week later, and he continued, and he's won since then. And fans just are so mean, I guess, to say is the best way to put it, you know, or maybe some are uneducated, maybe some are just trolling, I don't know, but that, I think that's another thing that hurt Tom, big old Tom.
100%. The fact that, yeah, literally in the same division, fighting your teammate, the guy gets poked and he's able to continue. And not only that, but he fought twice more after that and picked up 2 knockout wins.
Twice?
After
Wow.
the Apple. Yeah, he knocked out Shamil and then knocked out Derek Lewis. So, yeah, that definitely doesn't help, and which is one of the reasons why also Waldo has kind of blown up and become such a fan favorite in such a short amount of time. Another thing that I would say, and Tom already talked about this, but I think Dana White's comments also haven't helped. Dana White has a way with the public that a lot of what he says is just taken, you know, as if it was the Bible, you know, if it's just the truth and there's no questions about it. And he's been a little bit skeptic of the severity of Tom Aspinall's injury. I think even recently he threw a subtle comment out there. I don't know if you guys picked it up, when I think there was a reporter, I don't know if it was at a press conference or there was a specific interview, and I apologize for not citing that correctly, but he was asked about like reaction of Tom Aspinall's double eye surgery, and he didn't even refer as double eye surgery. He was like, oh yeah, he just got injections in his eye, like changing the wording around, making it a little less severe. So I don't know, man. This whole thing's weird, but definitely as far as PR from Tom Aspinall, he went from being the baby face, John Jones is the bad guy, this guy's the best heavyweight in the world, this and that, to being hated in a very quick amount of time. So definitely, you know, it sucks for Aspinall, and definitely a weird and very bizarre situation right now.
It all flipped quickly, man. But yeah, that was good stuff from PT Carroll. I got to give him his props as well. And by the way, champ, don't be going around shaking hands. You can get bruising and stuff like that. So don't do too much of that. All right. $1 million question. I saved it for you, Nolan. Should the UFC start thinking about well, first, your reaction to what Tom's put out,
Yeah.
and then should the UFC start thinking about an interim champ, and maybe, like I told Goes on last night's MMA Junkie Radio, not because we've reached the year mark or to discredit or disrespect Tom, almost to just give Tom his space. The rest of the division can move on, knowing full well that when Tom comes back, he's the man.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just to talk about Tom as a whole, I think people need to lay off of him. I don't know what the root of the criticism is, right? The man, we saw him get in the cage and get his eyes gouged. He's, do we think he's fit? Do people think he's faking it? Do people think that he just doesn't want to fight for some reason? A guy that got in there and fought the, scary ass dudes like Sergey Pavlovich and Cyril Gane, was willing to fight John Jones. I don't understand why people are getting on him so much. Sure, the PR thing we talked about, maybe not the best, but like, it doesn't change the fact that if the heavyweight champion can't see, that he shouldn't get in the cage. Now that leads right into the second question you asked me, which is about the interim titles. And I think 90% of the time that you were to ask me a question about something going on in division and ask me, should an interim title be implemented in this case, I would say no. But this is exactly what they are for. It's for times where the champion cannot compete because of certain circumstances, and that's where we're at. I mean, really the only thing that's working against this idea at this point is just how bad the heavyweight division is, right? Like, if Tom's going to be out for a significant amount of time, who do you put in there? If they win, who's the next guy up? Does it get to a point where you don't really have that marquee guy in the heavyweight division, which is kind of crazy thing when you think about it, when you go back to the days of Brock Lesnar and Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos, all the way through DC and Stipe and John Jones. Like, it's always been, at least at the top, had a guy that you can put on a poster. And so I don't know who that would be if you take Tom Aspinall out. So that's a bit of a problem, I understand, but I think the circumstances are, that this is what an interim title is for. And if all else is equal, then you got to throw one in there.
You guys agree? Just a nod. Danny and Goes, yes, an intro. Let's get it going. Okay. All right.
Oh man, that's the nod.
I hate it too, Goes. I hate rooting for interim titles. I feel your pain, but
if all I got to do is nod, then I'll do this. But I have a couple reservations about it.
I feel like this is one of the weird cases where it actually makes sense and it actually helps the division for the most part. And I understand why Goes might feel a little unenthusiastic about it. For the most part, like, an interim title always carries this negative connotation, right? Like, oh, the UFC is just kind of using this as a promotional tool. Right. They just needed another belt for another pay-per-view, or I guess now numbered event, this and that, et cetera, or they're accommodating a certain fight for somebody, right? Like the whole Paddy Pimblett situation in Ilya, which obviously didn't work out. But in this case, like, the heavyweight division is so bad that, like, just having random fights without knowing what they mean, without knowing if they're title eliminators, without knowing if the winner is going to end up fighting the champion anytime soon, like, that's just terrible. So I think at this point you have to put an interim title fight, and it'll actually be a good thing for the division. We can point at that guy and be like, that's the best guy right now that's active. And it kind of makes sense. And I think there are contenders right now that you could plug in there and make some fun fights, and at least we have somebody with a belt, and then have him defend the title, or just unify it with Aspinall should he be fit in somewhat near future, right? But I think at this point you have to implement it. I think you have to implement it, and the heavyweight division needs to get going. And you got to throw it. You got to throw it something to make it a little bit exciting. And I think interim title could do that.
Can I make it quick?
Sure, but you have to give me who it would be in the interim title fight. Goes. Go ahead and make it quick, and then tell me who your two candidates would be.
My problem mostly is I agree with everything they said. I think everything they said is correct, and this is why that belt exists. However, my problem is this. Of all the divisions, I feel like the one that you should wait the longest is the heavyweight division. Only because for the longest time in combat sports, the baddest man on the planet is your heavyweight champion, whether it's boxing or mixed martial arts. That is just the alpha male in the world. I don't know that you want so many guys walking around having that belt, just saying, yeah, I'm one of those guys too. You know what I mean? So in this division, I would hold out a little bit longer, but not that much, especially when you just don't know what could be next. So
Who would
that's
you
my
pair
only
up?
reservation about that. But other than that, I agree.
Who would you pair up?
I think it's got to be Waldo and Gon.
How about you, Danny?
It's got to be Waldo and Gon for sure.
Nolan?
Gon and Alex Pereira. Let's do it.
Look at you. Look at
Gotta add
you.
chaos, huh?
Yeah.
Gotta add chaos to
All
a
The
right.
man wants to
chaotic-
move up to heavyweight. There's always
The
been
White
a reason
House-
for him not to, and now there's a reason for him to if Tom's going to be out for a little bit.
Is this a White House fight, by the way?
I don't know. It could be. Although I don't know, like a Brazilian and a Frenchman. I don't know. I'm sure we'll see some international flair, but
they said they wanted.
Yeah, we
they said they
gotta
wanted to build the
celebrate
best card
diversity
possible.
here in the
true.
USA.
it's true.
Dana White was asked, would it be USA versus England? Because at first it was 250-year celebration, July 4th. Nope. Does it have to be all Americans? Nope. We just want to build the best card possible. So yeah, Pereira needs to be on a card like that if that's what they're going to do with him. So I think that definitely would belong there. Interesting. But guys, if the heavyweight division's so bad, why'd they get rid of Gelton Almeida? They parted ways with the guy that's 8-3. Were his last fights the most exciting? No, okay. But still, he's 8-3, and then he was even willing to pivot to light heavyweight, maybe, and change things up. Was this the right move? Do you agree or disagree with this move?
I disagree with this move. I think what it is it's a calculated risk on the UFC's part. They're sending a message across the board, right, to everyone. Fight the way we want, or you're gone. And in my opinion, I get where they're coming from, but at the same time, that's kind of a scary thing to do because at the end of the day, as fans, as media, whoever, I think the number one thing in the sport and what's most important is we want to know who the best in the world is. If that means it's a boring fighter, our problem is not with the fighter, our problem's with the sport because the sport allows that. We allow wrestling, we allow grappling. But that's why we also have like 12, 14 fights on a card because, yeah, some of them are going to suck. But for the most part, overall, the product is really good. It's scary territory when you start to tell fighters you have to fight a certain way because that's when it doesn't feel like a sport, right? The NFL doesn't go, man, this Super Bowl kind of sucked. We need you guys to throw the ball more. Otherwise, we're just not going to give you primetime games. Like that doesn't happen, right? Like if this is going to be a sport, you got to let it play out. What were the last two performances not the best? Probably not. But you know what? Before that, he had 2 stoppages. I just feel like anybody else. And at the same time, how are you going to like? What do you tell him when he says, "What about Tai Tuivasa?" Right? Like you have to be consistent too. So it's a calculated risk. I get why they're doing it. I just don't know if it'll pay off.
Nolan, what do you think, man? I don't think you're going to think it was a good move, right? But do you, or why would they?
I understand it from a promoter standpoint, right? You want to put product in the cage that will attract viewers. So I've always been kind of split on the issue of like excitement versus who the best fighters are. I will say I think that it used to be that there was more. There were other ways, right, that the UFC could perhaps put the pressure on fighters to be exciting or incentivize them to be exciting. Whether it was, remember John Fitch going on that run where he had all those wins and they weren't giving him a title shot. I felt like there were things at the negotiating table that they could do to influence more action. So I don't really love it. No, I think particularly with him where it seemed like we saw glimpses of brilliance specifically early on in his UFC career and even in the middle of it. We saw that he could hang with some of these guys. We saw that he could finish some of these guys. So I would have liked to see him move down to light heavyweight and kind of see what he had there. Were those guys just too big and too strong? I'm not totally sure, but I think it would have been worth experimenting, particularly where it's not like this is the lightweight division, right? There's not some guy that's number 10 and having this issue at lightweight. This is heavyweight where we're already talking about how there's a lack of bodies, there's a lack of fighters, there's a lack of high-level guys, and light heavyweight's not too far behind that. So I would have liked to see him stick around and kind of see if he could have finally put everything together back down to 205. But I guess we'll have to figure that out in PFL or something else.
Danny, your thoughts?
It was surprising because the guy was in the rankings. I mean, if you go on UFC.com and you check out the rankings, he's currently ranked number 8. So you're essentially saying you're letting go of one of the world's best, right? And yes, he wasn't on the best streak and his fights weren't so exciting, at least towards the end. But it's still a guy that was considered one of the best in the world at heavyweight. I think even given his his state, you still consider him one of the best 15, right? And what does the UFC say that they always pride themselves in? The best
always
fight the best.
Yeah.
And when you're letting a guy go that's ranked in number 8, I mean that's not a good message. That's not a good message. But it's also a very strong message, like Nolan said, to the other fighters, like saying, hey, you know, you gotta be more than just good. You gotta do more than just win. You gotta be exciting to stick around. And something also that I wanted to point out, and I've said this, you know, on my Spanish channel, but this is also a clear example and a clear showing of the UFC's monopolistic power at this point in time, right? Like, if you can afford to let go a top 10 guy and not even sweat it, because like, what competitor is going to use them? Like, is really PFL going to turn around their promotion and do wonders with this guy? No, but you're in a position where you can literally let go one of the world's best and not even care, right? Like not even do an announcement, just have it be like a Twitter report or whatever, because, you know, you can just put on any other fight and any given weekend, you're the only show in town. So I think that's also something that's a little bit worrying. I think in previous times, if you would have rewinded, I don't know, maybe 10 years, the UFC wouldn't have done this. They would have held on to him. Maybe they wouldn't have given him fights, but they would have held on to his contract because a fear of another promotion using him and saying, hey, we got one of the world's best. But that's no longer the case. I mean, at this point in time, it really does feel like the only show in town is the UFC. And because things are that way, they can afford and they can get away with this kind of stuff.
All right, you know there's going to be some Pelicans that are listening to this saying, these guys are always whining. So give me a positive, each one of you, on the heavyweight division. Is there anything out there, Goes, that you are kind of happy about, you know, maybe looking forward to a matchup or just some positives?
A positive? Holy crap. I honestly don't know. What is a positive? If there, maybe I am.
Heavyweight division is
Waldo's active. He's active. He's nice.
Yeah, you know, the fact that guy can just show up whenever and fight at a high level, that's refreshing.
Yeah, I'll give you a positive, George. Sure. It is positively a bad division right now.
Okay, Danny, is there a positive out there? Remember they cut that big Cuban too. Robelli did Spain. I thought that was too soon. He was only 1-2.
It was too soon.
As it's been pointing out in the chat, you know, ties 2 losses on 0-6, and he hasn't drank a shoey in 4 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I think the only positive right now would be Waldo. And if I were the UFC, I would, you know, throw all the money in the world at that guy and just kind of put him in the best cards, which they are, give him the best matchups and just get him out there because he is exciting finisher. He can talk his trash. He speaks 2 languages, or you know, he's learning English, but you know, he can appeal to both. And the dude delivers knockouts and fights often. That recipe right there gets you pretty successful in the heavyweight division. So yeah, I would say that'd be the only positive. And it looks like John Jones is finally done. He's also said some comments there, so thank God we don't have to talk about him all that much now. That's another one maybe, but yeah.
Maybe Gable Stevenson, right?
Okay, yeah. That's a good one. Very good one, actually.
Yeah. I wish the UFC would let these guys individually express themselves, like back before Reebok and Venom. Man, Waldo used to play baseball. If he could come out with a bat or something, I think it would be so cool. You know, now you got these relievers, and the Dodgers just signed, what's his name goes? Ortiz from the Mets. Every time he comes out, you got a guy on a trumpet, you know, celebrating the 1 inning that he's going to do work. UFC misses, you know, they could be doing a lot more to blow some of these guys up. You think he's a loser, Danny, or you want in?
No. I just want to point something out. Matt Wells, our fellow MMA junkie, pointing out Walter Walker. And yes, that is a very good shot.
I love that.
He's
dude.
Positive. I love that dude. Yeah, he's awesome.
We interviewed him, and he was funny, man. Good job.
He's hilarious. Yeah, and he's good, man. He's picking up wins.
He is. Yeah, I agree. All right,
moving on. The weekend.
What's that?
I said he picked up one over the weekend.
Yeah, too bad he couldn't get a heel hook.
Yeah.
Walter Walker? Oh, did he grapple? Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, he did.
Grappled Zion Clark. Karate combat. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And Uriah Hall got a win too, right?
He did.
Yep.
Did they all get paid or?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Okay.
You knocked that guy's soul out of his body.
UFC Houston's coming up. It's UFC Fight Night 267. It's this Saturday. So yeah, we had a week off, but they're back, and it's a hell of a main event. So on paper, guys, just give me a quick ranking and then tell me what you think of Strickland versus Hernandez. What does it mean for the middleweight division, Nolan?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a fine card. I don't know. I'd give it, this is going to sound like a hater score, but I'd give it like a 6, maybe a little bit, 6.5. You know, it's got some fun things. I think kind of this Paramount era, it's interesting, right? Because you look at the cards and you're like, none of these fights they're all like good matchups. They're kind of exciting fights, right? But again, you kind of struggle to find the meaning in this kind of plug and place era of the UFC. But I mean, again, Anthony Hernandez, this is a massive fight for him. That obviously has pretty clear title implications against Sean Strickland, who is very much in need of a win. You know, he's a guy that's had the title. He's had a crack at the title after he lost it. So he needs to prove something if he wants to get back, right? And one loss, if he loses to Anthony Hernandez here, I think it sets him back pretty far from getting that shot ever again. So there's that. And then really the other kind of meaningful bout is the Costa versus Ige one, which is a nice supporting act as well. So decent card for Houston. I wouldn't say it's bad. I wouldn't say it's great. Kind of in the middle.
Danny, how about you?
Decent, yeah. I'd give it a 7. I think for a fight night, it's good. And I agree 100% with Nolan. There's no star power here outside of the main event. But if you look at the fights, even at the prelims, there's some good matchups there. So I think if you're a fan and you're attending, you're going to have a good show. I think from fans watching at home, we're going to have a good show as well. Are we going to be looking at, huge changes in each division? No, but there are some fun fights there, and they're on the road, which I think the public always also plays a role there in making the fights a little bit more exciting. So I would give it a solid 7.
Main event's money, though, right?
It is. I like the main event a lot. I am just kind of wondering what the hell. And again, I'm not answering your question here, which I wish I could, but I really don't know what this means for 185. It's certainly an important fight. We can all agree on that. But beyond just saying that it's an important fight, I don't really know exactly what kind of implications it has at middleweight. And then I know this is a little bit off topic, but part of it is because we don't know what the hell's going on with Hamza, right? And his run lately, right, especially as champion, has been very disappointing. Won the title in a very disappointing way, and then just kind of disappeared and hasn't really been active. And I don't know. I guess Imavov is next, but what the hell is the update on that? I don't know.
Right, and then we'll have to consider Drakus at some point, and Rainier and some of the other cats. But I think if Fluffy wins, it's huge for him. But Goes, how about you? Rate the card. Are you with these guys? 6, 6.5, 7, less, more, and then the main event?
I'm going to Price is Right it, and I'm going to go 7.1. The main event's awesome. I think that's going to be a great fight. But when you look up and down these cards, the first thing you got to look at is, well, how many of those little numbers are at the end of each name, right? What story are you telling here? And sometimes when you don't have those little numbers, it's okay when some of the fights below just are bangers. And I think they have a couple of those. I think they have a couple that could be a lot of fun. So I'm actually excited for it. What it means for Hamzat, he doesn't have to face both of them, right? One of these two is going to be gone. And sometimes when you're as good as Hamzat, the guy you fear most is not a guy that's trying to equal you in technique. It's somebody who's just crazy and doesn't care. And both these guys are those guys. They're the type of guys that don't stop coming after you. You have to kill them to get them out of there. If I'm Hamzat, I'm hoping Sean Strickland wins this fight because Fluffy Hernandez is probably, I think, the only guy left that could maybe give him a good run. And Fluffy, if he comes back from injury and looks the same as he used to, look out, man. I think this is going to be a really fun fight.
Dude, that finish he had over Delites, they had to send shivers up the middleweight spines. He looked like a gangster on that one. But I agree. Yeah, that's I'm sure Hamzat will be watching, and I'm sure he has a certain feeling of what's what, right? So what is the best outcome for the division in your eyes, Danny? We kind of get the feeling that, at least for the champ, he wants Strickland to win, maybe not Fluffy, but for the division in the UFC, do you see what the preference would be, or just what would be the healthiest for the division?
Oh, that is a tough one, and I've been asking myself that since this matchup got announced. I'm a huge fan of Fluffy. I love his style. I love what he does when he gets in the cage. So personally, I would say Fluffy, but you can't undermine the star power that Strickland has built for himself in the last few years. And with the casuals, it resonates very, very well. But he's also quite a PR nightmare. But also, does the UFC care? I don't know. So I would say probably the best result would be Strickland, just because you get a huge name that's, still relevant, right? That proves that he's still relevant and still a top contender at 185. I mean, beating Fluffy is as legit as you can, legit of a win as you can get right now at 185. But me personally, I think seeing Fluffy win and him eventually fighting for a belt, especially if it's against Hamzat, that would be very, very exciting. But
you agree, don't Nolan?
Yeah, I mean, from a casual, like from an outsider perspective of what would get the UFC the most amount of money or most amount of attention, it would be Sean Strickland. But I think for kind of the hardcores in the divisional flow to get, Sean's been there, he's won the title, he's got his crack to get it again. I think for me, I always want fresh faces, fresh matchups, particularly when it's like, what are we going to see him fight for the title a third time in a handful of fights, particularly where he hasn't been that exciting. I think for Hernandez, at least for the hardcore observer, would be the more favorable outcome.
Hernandez is also more active lately, although he did, have that injury. He's also 2 years younger, and yes, less of a PR nightmare. But he also doesn't even connect with the sport or watch this with the sport. Although, maybe that there's a little bit of that mystique, right? Like the Diaz brothers had. They never really were.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Think about Jorge Masvidal, the Diaz brothers, the little void that they left. And when you look at the way those three were promoted throughout their career, before they became big stars, they had a lot of fights in the UFC before the UFC realized, wait a minute, we kind of have something with these guys. I hope they don't make that mistake with Fluffy, because he can be that guy. He's like the definition of a BMF. And every time he picks up the mic, he gains steam. Don't miss out on this guy. Really promote him, and I think he could be a big thing.
We still got 20 minutes left. If you can hit that like button, we would appreciate it. Share it with your friends. It's live every Monday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Spinning Back Clique, going on like 5 years now. We discuss all the latest news, preview all the upcoming fights, go over the latest results. Not many results from last week, except Karate Combat and Zuffa Boxing. So that's why we just jumped right into the latest news here. All right, is this Strickland's last chance at being a champion goes? Like, if he loses here, do we just not start including him in the Dricus, Hamzat, Nasruddin, Fluffy talk, Rainier? How big of a loss would this be for Strickland?
I think it'd be huge. When you look at all the names you brought up, right? The climbing up the ladder is going to be pretty long, and he's not easy to deal with. He doesn't like to fight in certain places. He's kind of a PR nightmare. I would say, yeah, this probably be his last shot.
Danny, he's got a big mouth. Do you agree with Goes? You think he could maybe talk his way in with one or two fights or anything like that? Or do you agree with Goes that this could be it for him in terms of title aspirations?
I think it depends how he looks. If it's a competitive fight and then he loses like a close decision, I think he's still game. He'll be in like a similar territory of Brandon Moreno, where like the odds are not in your favor, but it's also not impossible. But certainly a bad beating here, like let's say he lost like Roman Dolidze, man, he would get pushed back a ton. I think at that point, yeah.
Nolan King. Well, first, a shout out to Jose Arroyo. He's watching through Facebook, and he's saying this is Sean's last run. What do you think, Nolan? Do you agree with Jose Arroyo?
Yeah, I mean, it's Sean. I think Strickland's always going to have that Dana White privilege, sort of be in that category where he can do one less thing to get to the title, perhaps. So if he loses here and then he goes on a run, say he wins 2 or 3, like middleweight's not the strongest division either. Like I don't rule out possibly, but I think this moves him into the unlikely category if he loses to Hernandez.
Kind of like O'Malley, right? Always hovering near the top, regardless of what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I agree with that. Yeah, this one could be it, but he does have a motor mouth on him, so that helps him a ton. We also have Jeff Neal versus Uros Medic. Neal opened up about addiction problems. Shout out to James Lynch for that interview. 5 years, guys, drinking and abusing And it all started after the Neil Magny fight, or I guess around that time. He had sepsis, and I recall that those times he was in the hospital. I can't believe that was 5 years ago. Time flies, but still, glad to hear that he's doing better. What are you guys' thoughts on this fight, Neil versus Medic? Danny?
I think it's a fun fight, badass fight. Could be fight of the night, or definitely is the candidate for a bonus. And yeah, pretty wild, the whole Jeff Neal fighting while also not being sober, and would really only get sober, like I think he said, like a week or two out before each fight. And he still did pretty well in the last few years. He gave Shafkat like a pretty competitive fight, and considering that those circumstances, man, that is pretty crazy, right? But I'm glad, I'm very happy that he's sober now, and he looks to be in a very good place. So good for him, man.
Can he ever reclaim top 10, Nolan, in your opinion? Or will this fight, I guess, be the measuring stick now that we know that hopefully he's got those days behind him?
Yeah, it'll be tough. I mean, I think he's just kind of up against the clock in terms of his age, right? He's taken some, sometimes we see older guys that maybe don't have those miles on them, but he also has been in some absolute wars. He's dished out some damage, but he's taken some serious blows as well, as we saw last time around with the Carlos Prats fight. So I think it'll be really tough. I'm not saying that he can't kind of get a little bit more momentum than he has now, get some more wins. I think he has more left in the tank. This is a really fun fight, by the way. The UFC, like, as I think they've caught me off guard with some of their bookings recently. Like, this was not a matchup that I had really considered, but I'm also very interested in it, and I think that they're weirdly similar kind of fighters, and I think this is just an absolute banger, and it's super, super important for both guys for kind of opposite reasons.
Who wins on
Saturday? I'm leaning with Neil, but I think it's really going to be who can land the first good one.
Hands will be flying. Goes, you agree? Yeah. Jeff Neal or Uros Medic?
Medic is on a little bit of a roll. I think he's starting to figure things out. I'm going to lean towards him.
All right. Danny, you the tiebreaker here. One guy likes Medic, the other guy likes Neal. Who's tripping?
Oof, I'm going to go Neal. Neal knockout, man. I'm going to go Neal knockout. I think
I'm going to root for Neal as well. Hopefully he's gotten that behind him. I mean, if the last 5 years, this was what was happening in his life, I'm anxious to see if he's cleaned up, but hopefully it's not too late. So many fighters have ruined some of their peak years for fame, right? Addiction, things like that. And it's so sad, but I hope he can pull it off. It's his home state, not his home city. He's from North Dallas, if I'm not mistaken. But this is taking place in Houston. But still, I think he'll be the popular one walking into the octagon. And I forgot, give me a prediction on Hernandez and Strickland, Danny.
I'm going to go Fluffy. And I think he stops Strickland late.
Goes?
Fluffy, and he gets it done in round 4.
I was going to say the same thing. How about you, Nolan?
I'll say Hernandez by decision.
Hernandez by decision. Yeah, I think Fluffy with a finish, but it'll be in the later rounds. I'm glad this is a 5-round fight because both guys have good gas tanks, both tough hombres. Strickland not the easiest guy to take down or hold down either, but still, Fluffy does have just relentless pressure. So I'm going to side with him on that one. Give me another highlight from this card that we can look forward to, Nolan.
Yeah, I mean, the main card, the most recent fight announced, Josiah Harrell is back in the UFC, kind of a cool little redemption story. For those that didn't know, he was supposed to fight, I believe in 2023 International Fight Week. He took a short notice fight versus Jack Della Maddalena when Jack was 4-0 in the UFC. And after weigh-ins, his medicals came back. He had been diagnosed with a brain condition called moya moya, which we've seen in some fighters. Vince Murdoch was another one. And basically they had to open up his brain and reroute some of the blood, the arteries to make sure that he didn't have stroke issues in the future. And he worked his way up. He went 4-0 back on the regional scene. Even went out to some events and was ready to fight, and they wouldn't license him the day of the fight. They'd pull it saying they didn't want him to fight. So he got all the clearance. He's cleared, I believe, in Houston, in Texas and Nevada and all these other places. And now stepping into a really tough spot against Jacoby Smith. But just to even get back to this point is pretty impressive. Such a positive person. Yeah, I'm excited to see him back in there. Really good fighter too.
Goes, how about you? You got another fight to spotlight?
It's gonna sound weird because we were just crabbing on the heavyweight division, but I think Delija and Spivak will be fun. I like both those guys.
All right, Danny, ahora tú.
I'm gonna go with Michel Pereira versus Zachary Reese. I'm a big fan of Demoledor. I love the whole spinning stuff, the break dancing. I love it all. But he's on a 3-fight losing streak. He's been uncharacteristically like he hasn't really been himself lately. Hoping for a bounce back here. Let's see, but let's see what happens with Demoledor.
You a breakdancer back in the day, Danny? High school? Boogaloo Segura?
No, I wish, but I think he's awesome. I think those highlights of his, I think they're awesome.
All right.
I love that guy.
The Latin guys get down. You never know. Danny,
Nah, I wish,
right?
man.
at them wedding receptions probably kills it.
Wasn't Pettis a good breakdancer? He used to do halftime
Pettis,
shows. and
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. At the Milwaukee Bucks games. Good poll goes. I remember that. Listen, I'm gonna homer a little bit on these two since that is a decent card. I think I'll give it about a 6.5 as well. But Chidi and Njokuani, whether he wins or loses, it's always a violent finish. Or I've seen enough of them to just know that I look forward to his fights. This is the taller and bigger, younger brother of Anthony Njokuani for some of you old school guys. And then Puna Soriano, guys, since he's dropped to welterweight, he has just been, he's always been kind of a KO machine, but he's just been fun. Now, listen, the KOs haven't exactly come. He did have one against Medic, but he's out there throwing heat. So I look forward to his next fight as well. It's time for the Q&A. So I know we locked in a few, and I want to thank Joseph Boza. He was throwing so many out there in the chat that the guys were teasing him, saying, hey, man, take it easy. Hold on. But Boza deserves it. He's an OG here in our chat, so he can ask as many as he wants, and we'll start off with one of his. Have they heard anything about UFC 326 or UFC 327? It's odd how those two big numbered events are coming up, and we don't know anything main card worthy. All right, so 326 would be the one that's happening with the BMF, right?
Yep.
Here in Las Vegas. So that's your main card. Sorry, that's your main event. Charles Oliveira versus Max Holloway. Nolan, do you know if they're going to add to that, or is the card set?
I think last we checked, they were going to try to add a co-main event. I think the last broadcast we saw had it at TBA. Yeah, it's a weird card, man. It's again kind of missing supporting acts. They had Moicano on there, and it sounds like he's not going to stay on there. Now that who's he supposed to fight initially? Why am I blanking?
Ortega.
Yeah, Ortega pulled out. It sounds like Moicano's not going to remain on the card at all. So I don't really know what they do there, to be honest with you.
As far as 327, the rumors we're hearing is that flyweight title, although traditionally flyweights haven't usually held the top spot, so maybe that slides down to the co-main event spot. But Dominic Reyes versus Johnny Walker, Tatiana Suarez versus Lupe Godinez, or some other fights I've heard. Paulo Costa moving up to light heavyweight against Azamat Mirzakhanov. I don't know how official these are, but I've seen them out there. So perhaps this weekend's card will help them fill in that one.
Yeah, I think for 327, they kind of have the clip loaded, and I think they're just waiting on a main event. So I think you'll probably see a Dana White, one of those Instagram things pretty soon, because I think there's a few contender fights that have not been put out there yet.
And would that make Van versus, I guess, Tyra, which is a rumor at this point, the co-main?
That's what I'd been hearing behind the scenes. But again, it kind of depends on, I think, what the other fight that they're looking at, if it happens or not.
Look at that grin that the Boston shot caller has. He's not
he knows
player.
something.
He's giving away the card right now. He's got connections. All right, here comes another one from Fresh Melon Juice. What's up with Aspinall kicking a football perfectly in Italy? What happened to the double vision and black spot? I haven't seen it. Goes, you laughed. Did you see it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I kind of get this is what we were talking about earlier, where they're in the right. Like, you can't tell a fighter to fight if you can't see, but they don't do themselves any favors by doing these types of things, because people are going to pick at it, right? Like, if you're saying when I stand up, sometimes I get vertigo, then yeah, if somebody sees you dribbling a ball, kicking a ball like that, they're gonna point it out. Is that the end all be all? Does that mean he's been lying? Probably not, but it's just not a good look.
So what did he exactly do? He was just kicking it around like with his kid or something, or did he like David Beckham? I mean, wing one in from.
No, it wasn't David Beckham, that's for sure. But it definitely, if you're having problems seeing, you probably wouldn't be that good at it, I would say.
Mm-hmm. All right, here comes another one from Joseph Boza. Did Javid Basharat get released because he whined that Gianni Vasquez was 141 pounds. But I think we did have rumors. Did we confirm that happened, Danny? Do you know?
Yes, he confirmed on his Instagram that he is no longer with the UFC. Now, we don't know exactly, maybe Nolan can correct me on this, if he was released, if he had fights remaining, or his deal just came to an end and then UFC chose not to re-sign him. But yeah, it was from the UFC's part not wanting to keep working with Javid.
Yeah, I can't say for sure because I don't totally know his contract status, but he had 7 fights in the UFC, and typically what ends up happening is after the third fight on the contract, they renew for 4 more. So it would be, 1, 2, 3, you renew, and then 4, 5, 6, 7 would have been the end of the second contract for him. So my guess is that his contract had expired.
That was a weird one, right? Like, I get the Gilton one because, he is a top 10 guy, so he probably has like a decent contract, right? Gets paid a decent amount. And then his fights aren't so exciting, right? Okay, fine. Javid, on the other hand, like, he's not the best fighter out there, but he's clearly like UFC level at this point. Like, he's a guy that can hang. And his fights weren't like all that bad, right? Like, that fight against Gianni wasn't, I don't remember. I was doing the play-by-play. I don't recall it being a bad fight. And, he picked up a win, took a fight against a guy that missed weight. Like, I don't know. I think the whole brother thing with Fareed is also cool. Like, I don't know. I didn't really get that one.
He only had 2 losses, and he just beat a guy that was 5 pounds overweight. I just don't see the timing of that one. That's
it's a weird one.
Weird.
Also, losses to Ricky Simone, who was ranked not that long ago, and then Ibn Sahabi, who's close to a top 5 now. Like,
for sure.
The hell?
Yeah. 240s. I wish we could answer your question. I don't know if any of the guys can. Who do you got, Ryan Garcia or Barrios? I really don't know much about the matchup. I know Garcia's also had his problems outside of the boxing ring. I imagine that's what he's talking about.
I got Barrios.
You got Barrios?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. There you go. You got an answer there. Jose Arroyo strikes again from Facebook. He says, I really wish the UFC had Pride FC rules. Don't like the elbow. Stops fights prematurely with cuts. What do you guys think? I don't know that one's going to go over too well. Nolan, are you I think you like the elbows, right?
Yeah, I love the elbows. There's nothing better than like a standing clean elbow. That's the one that gets me. So I can't get rid of those.
Yeah, and speaking of the Pride FC rules, I never had a problem with them having soccer kicks or the heel stomps. Is it great to look at, or even knees to the down opponent? No, but I don't remember there being a ton of injuries from it either. Yeah. So I would bring some of those over, honestly.
You know what, though? If you are not a fan of wrestling, that would affect wrestlers a lot, because if you go for a shot and they sprawl and you don't get it, guess what's going to happen to the top of your head?
Blasted in the knee.
Yeah, so that would affect them.
Yeah, Peter Yan would love it. All right. Here's another question that comes in from Daniel Forrest 550. What would you rather see? Bones Jones versus Pereira or Gane versus Pereira at the White House card? Danny?
I think I'd rather see. Well, it depends. Is it for an interim title? Like, what? I don't want to see Jones back in the title picture because he's so unreliable, and he's going to hold that division hostage no matter what happens. But if it's just a super fight, no title implications, yeah, I'm down for some Jones Fideta. Sure.
Goes
Bones Pereira, and I think I would look forward to the 30 for 30 afterwards on what happened.
Nolan?
Yeah, I'd go with John and Pereira. As much as we're sick of hearing about John's flip-flopping, I think we all would be lying if we said him being in there against the current biggest star in the UFC would be something else.
I would love it if they just kickbox like Alexander Gustafsson and Jones did, but Jones is smart. He would take Pereira down, and it wouldn't be as great as you think, folks. But I think I'd still, on paper, that's the direction I would go in. Here's the couple that I had. Let's see if we can blast through them really, really quick. Danny, do you agree with Brendan Schaub? He said the heavyweight division is dying, if not dead. Yes or no?
It's not dead, but it's definitely on life support. It sucks.
John Jones said Gable Stevenson will be a champion within a year, Nolan. And Gable Stevenson said, yeah, that sounds about right. Do you agree with them?
No, there's no way. I mean, he would have to be supremely active and totally propelled into a title fight right off the bat. I don't think that'll happen.
Goes Corey.
Two.
So by 2027, Gable Stevenson is still not champ. The end of 2027, he's still not champ. I'm asking Olin.
Oh, could be. That's more realistic.
Okay, and then goes O'Malley and Sandhagen at the White House. I know it's not a title fight, but does that belong on the White House card? Would you endorse that?
I would be okay with it, but I wouldn't be too fired up.
Why not? What's wrong with O'Malley versus Corey Sandhagen? I think we've all wanted to see that one, no?
I don't think the matchup stylistically, I don't think would be very fun.
Check his ass, Danny. He's tripping, isn't he?
Yeah, he's tripping. That's a fun fight, man. I love it. I think that's a good fight.
That one good.
Stylistically is fun, but I gotta say, I want to see that for 5 rounds. So no White House for me. Put it on a fight night, on the road, main event, 5 rounds. That's what I want to see. But hashtag goes be tripping, 100%.
Well, I agree with the 5 rounds part. I'd want, if it's not for 5 rounds, I don't think I'd want to see it as much. So maybe he's half tripping. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to Spinning Back Clique. It's every Monday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We always appreciate your support. Hit the like button on your way out if you could. All right, that's a thumbs up. Also, kindly consider subscribing to the channel. It's free. We cover it all, man. Seriously, all that stuff you want to know about. Uriah Hall had a spinning back kick. He won a fight, karate combat, UFC BJJ, Zuffa boxing. We're dipping and dabbling in all of it. Of course, MMA is the bread and butter, but still it's free. And all you got to do is consider subscribing. We'll handle the rest. All right, folks. We'll see you all in 7 days on the next Spinning Back Clique. Take care. Go out and be a champion.